Hello, everyone, and welcome to your weekly astrological weather. I am Amanda Poole Walsh, the founder of Astrology Hub, and I'm here with Predictive Astrologer Anne Ortelee. And we're going to jump right into the weekly horoscope. Before we do that, I wanted to just I said weekly horoscope, weekly weather, but I wanted to let you know. We actually have a weekly horoscope that you can sign up for free if you're interested. The column is written by Christopher Renstrom, who has been writing for the San Francisco Chronicle for at least 14 years. At this point, I think it's longer than that. But he is awesome. He's amazing. And you can get your horoscope by sign, sun and rising, every week. And we'll send it right to your inbox. So you can just go to astrologyhub.com/horoscope or go to astrologyhub.com and just hit the horoscope button and sign up to get that delivered to you directly. And so, Anne, let's talk about the week. Yep. What do we have?
We're ready. It's a whole new moon. Okay, we finished eclipse season. Everybody applaud. Where we've had 8 weeks of revelations, seeing things, emotional processing, and now we're done. So we had a new moon yesterday around 1:30. And 1:34 to be exact. And it was a new moon.
Eastern? Is that Eastern time?
Eastern time.
Mm-hmm.
It was conjunct in Cancer at the last degrees, 28 degrees Cancer. And it was opposite the COVID clump. And somebody on the, on Astrology Hub said, what's this COVID clump? The Capricorn planets that are hanging out together is what I call the COVID clump. And we know they don't actually cause it, but they reflect the story. And they're reflecting the story of major structural change, revision, into the depths, emerging from the underworld. And so we're having that new moon opposite them. Now, all last week, the sun was opposite each of those the COVID planets in order, and we lost some people, major people that we go, oh, wow. And I apparently said Rob Reiner a few times, Carl Reiner. I'm going to correct it. I know Rob and Carl. I know Rob's still here. His dad died. And we lost Congressman Lewis, and we lost some major people that are part of the vision of the country, old leaders, people that led us. And now with this new moon, we're all being asked, and it was just yesterday, we're all being asked, okay, so now what are you going to plant? But the thing is, the new moon is right opposite Saturn. So he's going to give us a real solid structure to that planting. And also right next to the new moon, in the same area of the chart, is the North Node, and it's on the fixed star Polaris. Now, Polaris is a bear in the sky, and in ancient times, navigators would look at that star because it didn't move. And that's what they would sight off of to know where they are. Now, we have GPS, so we just don't even think about it. But back before there was GPS, that's how you figured out where you were going, because that star didn't move. Because remember, all the rest of them rise, culminate, and set, and that North Star is up there. So the North Star is receiving an aspect from the new moon and from the Saturn, and it's asking you to think about what your North Star is and where you want to go. On the South Node, we have the fixed star Acumen. Now, Acumen, we think of, oh, that means you're smart. But that also is tied to what we call the galactic center, and that's kind of a wisdom portal. It actually is the sun for our solar system. Our solar system goes around the galactic center, and it's a very psychic portal. So if you've been having wicked dreams lately, or imaginings, or seeing things, like you wake up, sometimes you're consciously dreaming. I had somebody earlier today, he was sitting on the beach on Montauk, which is like the end of the United States out in the middle of the ocean. And he was sitting there and this whale breached. And he was like, and it was like, it was on his partner's mother's birthday, right? The whale emerged. And so they both looked at each other and went, wow. Communications from the world. I kind of watch, like somebody says something, you hear something, you have an aha moment. So this new moon is really talking to us. Now, the hard part about the new moon is it has Eris, the goddess of discord, stopped. And we've only had her since 2000. I mean, she's been out there forever, but we've only known about her since 2005. So she's all the discord. But it's also like how, and we've been talking about there's a lot of discord, and there's going to be till January, but your job is to harness the discord and move in the direction you want. Venus is back at the degree of the eclipse on June 5th and back at the degree of the Sun-Venus conjunction on June 2nd. So remember, she was retrograde, right? So she's now saying, based on all the stuff you learned during eclipse season, all the things I showed you, all the things you went, oh, and then all the things you processed emotionally, now what do you want to do? So it's a very big week. And if you never do a new moon ritual, I want you to do one. Today, tomorrow is Leo moon, good closing aspects. Thursday, Friday, Virgo moon, good closing aspects. Don't do it on the weekend. Weekend's going to suck. It's a Libra moon. Everybody's going to be crabby. Tomorrow is adjusting day. Wednesday's adjusting day because the moon is forming a fast moving finger of God, which is going to make you see things. So you might go, okay, this is what I want to create. And then fast moving, and you go, well, maybe I'm going to modify that list a little with the Virgo energy. So big list, big dreams, big growth, support from Saturn. We are also going to have Mercury square Mars this week. Mercury square Mars makes us a little testy. We're a little bit crabby. And we're going to be, so you want to watch the crabby. And Mercury is going to be, coming into square Mars. And it's probably an old fight. It's not necessarily a new fight. It's something you've already gone around the bend a little bit on this. We're also going to have the sun going into Leo, which is wonderful. That's the sun's favorite place, and that's 30 days of Leo, 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 Leo. And so create. But most important is sitting down sometime this week and doing that new moon ritual. Visioning, big picture, lots of stuff. I want a big list. Vision board if you want to make one. It's a water moon. It's at the last degrees of Cancer. It's really seeking, it's so emotionally charged. Plus, it's working with Saturn. Now they're in an opposition. So sometimes that's like, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to go here. Other times it's, I want to plant this. I want to make this. I'm going to put a structure to my dreams. And I'm good with both. And they may be both. You may have both going on. Like, I want to get rid of that, but I want to support this. And that is kind of the big energy of the week. We also have Venus in her Gemini in nature going to come up and square Neptune. So there's a lot of energy about dreams and maybe disillusionment of dreams. And I guess that's really true because I sneezed. So those are the highlights of the week. And of course, we like Leo moons because we're creative. It's got a good closing aspect. Moon is void Wednesday. That's a big day of adjustment, but it's a spiritual day. So it's okay to do your ritual then because it's a rituals are you connecting to spirit. And then the back end of the week is Virgo moon, Thursday, Friday, really productive, trining all those earth planets, trining the COVID clump, working together, organizing, figuring it out. Libra moon on the weekend, a little crabby, but that's okay.
Why is Libra moon crabby?
Because Libra moon is opposite Eris, the goddess of discord, and she's squaring the Saturn, the COVID clump. So it's the arguments you've been having, the repetitive arguments you've been having with partner that you're just about done with, but not quite yet. So it's like, it's a very crabby weekend. Not bad. I mean, Libra moon goes, I want to relate, I want to communicate, but Venus and Neptune are having a square. So it's the kind of weekend where you're not necessarily going to hear them, or maybe you're going to drink a little bit too much or be a little bit, you're not going to hear quite what they say and go off. Get mad, whatever. So it's a weekend to be cautious about relationship dynamics. That's probably a better way to say it. And seeing we have relationships with everybody right now,
Yes.
Yeah. Relationships are a little fraught. We're supposed to be working on our own stuff right now.
I mean, even the people at the grocery store, even the people, I mean, we're in relationship with everyone right now.
Yeah. And everybody's a little bit, they're in their own. Little testy. They're in their own space. And, you go, oh, yeah, you're a little testy, aren't you? And sometimes you're going to go, and other times you're going to go, I'm just going to go over here to the milk section. Bye,
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, I forgot to ask you about the scale.
I know you skipped right over that, didn't we, Amanda?
I know. I'm so sorry, everybody. So what are we on?
The scale's about 7-8 this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
we're out of the crazy of the eclipses, but we have to implement what we learned.
Okay.
Right. So we're implementing what we learned during the eclipses. So maybe we broke up and we moved out, and now we're implementing that. Or maybe we moved in, or maybe we have to do the adjusting energy of what the vision looks like now that we've made those changes. But we also feel a little more productive. When we still may be having some battles, but the idea is don't waste your energy on the battles. Go do what you want to do and then figure it out. Because when you struggle, you're not necessarily getting what you want. So they're going to say no. You say, I'm not going to play with you. I'm going to go over here and do this instead.
And you talked several times about revisiting old arguments or, coming around to things that you've been around. What is the astrology inviting us to do with those repetitive situations?
Yeah. Well, the eclipse, the full moon is in the what did I learn as a kid house, and does it still apply? What were the rules I was taught, and do I still agree with them? Do I still want to follow them? And of course, Mars is young right now, which is the planet of how I want to take action. He's 12 in the new moon chart. So we're all kind of like bratty teenagers right now. So what were you like when you were 12, 7th grade?
Okay.
7th, 8th grade. Yeah.
And is the idea to move beyond where we were at when we were 12, or is it to tap into the truth that was wanting to come through when we were 12?
Think about what a 12-year-old does. How do they talk to their mother? I have one of my clients. She's like, my son is so mean to me. I'm like, I know. He's 13 now. You're not the goddess anymore. Not that you're not going to be again. You're his mother, and he does love you. But yeah, right now he's a little bratty teenager. And they have their own. And so harness your bratty teenager in a good way. I know in my case, I read The Feminine Mystique, and I gave it to my mother. I said, you should read that. My mother was like, what are you doing? Who are you to be telling me what I should read? Which that was a book that came out when I was a teenager, and this is my mother's life, right? Or sometimes when you're a teenager, you start kissing boys or girls, or you start, really excelling in your sports, or you start thinking differently. Because the period of time, remember back to the thing I did at the beginning of the year, 12 to 24 is when we learn to think for ourselves. But we're also being asked to go look at the stuff that we learned when we were younger that we didn't really question. Those were the rules. So when you find yourself saying, well, what you should do, should is a Saturn word, you want to think and go, well, whose words are those? Even if you're saying it to yourself, I should do that. You go, well, whose words are those? My mother's, my father's, my teacher's, my whatever. Do I want to follow them? Do I still agree with them? And if I don't, what do I want to do? And so that, rather than fighting, going forward with the energy. And remember, we have conscious choice of how we use it. And that's probably the most important thing to remember now. Like, what are we consciously working on? Because you might want to get into a little power struggle with someone, or you might be like, and then you want to ask yourself, do I really want to waste my time here? And the questions, I wrote these down. The questions are, am I living my life in accordance with my values? And where do I have to show you my life? Where do I have to say this is what I want to do? And sometimes in awful times, the best thing to do is to be decent. And that we're living between worlds now. We're in this transitional phase where, we had our caterpillar analogy. We're in the black gunky part, right? And we have to say resilience in changing times. What is the depth we have? What are the strengths we have? Pitch to the strengths. Having an argument with someone, pitch to their strengths. Do your Saturn. And we're going to re-record the Saturn presentation because there's some binging noises because I didn't know how to turn off the doorbell when I recorded it the first time. So we're going to record it, and I know how to turn off the doorbell. So if you didn't buy Do Your Saturn yet, wait until Thursday, Friday, and you'll be able to buy a revised version of it.
Well, and
all the people who already bought it will get a new version too.
Yes, yeah. Even so, if you want your Saturn workshop, you can still get it now, and you'll get the upgraded version also. So if you already bought it, you will get the upgraded version too.
Yeah,
So don't worry about that.
And the cat came to help me here. Yeah, he's always helpful. This is the one that turned off the mic the last time, so I'm watching his feet right now. But yeah, that's the idea. Is we're living in very deep times, which we know, and it's not easy to get dragged into stuff sometimes, and there's a concept in Jungian analysis or in Jungian that we have this shadow and we have the light. And a lot of times we get a little nervous about the shadow, but everybody casts a shadow. We all have one, right? And the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. That's how it works. But it also is, in the shadow is the riches. And when I was a little kid, I used to dance. I wasn't very sporty. You had to take friggin' gym class, so they'd put me out in the back where the ball didn't go, and I would be out there dancing with my shadow, and I got Matt Remo's tail here dancing with me. I would be dancing with my shadow, and the ball would go by, and they'd all yell at me. Dance with your shadow. Dance with the parts that you got to know over the last few weeks that you maybe were like, I didn't know about that. I know, I'm working. We'll pay you in a minute. He's my shadow. He's my Scorpio moon. He always comes over when I talk about Scorpio stuff. So so being conscious of, and also being decent to people, because everybody else is doing this too. They're all owning their shadow. They're all getting to know it, or they're all being asked to look at it. And it's, and it can be scary if you don't look, but if you look, you go, okay, I see it. Do I want to change it? No, yes. Again, we have free will and choice. Yeah.
The thing is too, with the shadow, I often think about those cartoons where the mouse is like projecting this scary thing. You don't know it's a mouse. You think it's a big monster on the wall, like the shadow, but then they turn on the lights and you see that it was just a little mouse, and that was the shadow. Sometimes it's that thing that we think is going to be so hard to face or deal with, and then it's like once the light's on it's like, oh, okay, that wasn't that big of a deal. Like, I can do that. The other thing is, when you were talking about are we living our life in accordance with our values, a great way to assess that easily is to look at your calendar and your bank statement, because what you're spending your time and your money on is what you are valuing. Now, whether or not that's actually what you value is another question. So, where you actually spend your time, where you actually spend your money, and see if you can start to adjust those things more in alignment with where you really want to be going. If we're doing this new moon ritual and we're creating structure around what we want to create in the world, then it's important that we're actually taking steps every single day in that direction. And it's easy to see that when you look at your calendar. What are you prioritizing? And your bank statement, what are you spending money on? Because those are the things that you are asserting to yourself, really, at the end of the day, that's what you value.
Yep.
And can you revisit and this maybe is that Venus hitting what was it? Venus is going to hit the eclipse point.
Yeah.
And so just one more time.
So what happens when an eclipse takes place, or a point is sensitive? So like when Saturn and Pluto joined, that's a sensitive point too, 22 Capricorn, right? So when an eclipse happens, it makes that degree sensitive. Right. So the full moon eclipse that happened on June 5th was 15 degrees of Gemini Sag. So Venus was retrograde then, right? And she'd gone over it backwards. And then she continued to go backwards, and then she stopped, and now she's come forward and she's going over that point again. So when planets go over the point again, they say, hey, remember what happened back then? And everybody goes, oh, I do. And now Venus is going forward, and she says, so what do you want to do about it? And you want to talk to Venus, and you want to say, well, Venus, what I learned in eclipse season. Venus, during eclipse lesson, I had a lot of lessons, and what I learned about what I want to create and what I love, or what I don't love anymore. I want to do something different. And now she says, okay, so now's the time to take the action. And we go, ooh, I have to act on it. And she's like, well, that's how you get it done. And of course, she was in an air sign, so she helped us see things. and we'll cycle back. But so when a planet goes over it, so like the eclipse, the conjunction that we had at 22 Capricorn with Saturn and Pluto, we've had Jupiter at 24, and then on the November 13th eclipse, or the November 13th conjunction, is going to be at 22 again. So 22 Capricorn is a hot degree. Now New York's Mercury is 22 Capricorn. So we were the first ones with the pandemic. As is, there's something in Seattle has some, I don't remember Seattle's chart, but it has something at 22 too. So that conjunction made us aware that the virus was here. Now, as we watch planets go back and forth over it, the other parts are blowing up where they have 22, because now you know what I mean? It's like it triggers it. So it's a triggering degree is probably a better way to say it. So if an old love came, or, you heard about an old boyfriend, or you remembered some old money story or something of value to you, you want to kind of know that this week, the new moon says, okay, so we took you on this little journey. Remember, it was emotional, see it, and then emotional over the 8 weeks. And so now what you were emotional about at the beginning of June, what do you want to do about it?
Okay. That's really helpful, because those were like definite points in time, the emotional, the illumination, and then the emotional again. So whatever that theme was, now it's okay. How do you want to move forward with it in a new way, in a different way, based on what you learned?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's what I love about astrology, is it's not judgmental. It just says, I showed you this.
Right.
What did you learn? And you go, and then they go, okay, well, now that you know, what do you want to do about it?
Right.
And that I always think of as, well, what are you going to do now that you know it?
Right.
And it, not in a bad way, just you have the information. What do you
have a choice?
You have a choice.
And before we knew it, we actually didn't have a choice, because it was running in the background and we weren't aware of it. So with the awareness, we actually do have a legitimate choice now that we didn't have before.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And this word decent, this is a word I don't feel like we hear it very much, when you say be decent. And I looked it up actually, because I was like, what is the actual definition? It's kind of interesting, but conforming with generally accepted standards of respectable or moral behavior, of an acceptable standard. So when we're thinking about being decent, are you saying like in our interactions with people, just extending them the benefit of the doubt, or treating them the way we would want to be treated, those kinds of things? Is that what we're thinking about in terms of decency this week?
Mm-hmm. Common decency. What's common decency? I'm always like, would you want like 10 people told about that behavior? I'm always like that, looking in the mirror. You want to look in the mirror and see what the story is.
Right.
Do you really want to do that? And, my mother would always say, I don't want to hear about it from the neighbors. I'd rather hear about it from you. Right. So it's an understanding of what's acceptable from our perspective, and behaving in a way, I'm always, when people go off on people, I always, and I do have a temper. So occasionally I do go off, but I also am like, what are you trying to accomplish here? What is your purpose in this? And behaving with common decency, or being decent, what are you doing? You're valuing sense or value, right? Sense or value, and you're sharing your value. And that's an important thing, and understanding what is your value, because really that's what your life is built on. To your point, where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your money? That's your value, right? That's what you value. And where you don't spend it, even if you say, oh, I want to do it, and you're not doing it, then one must conclude that really isn't of value to you. And so,
or at least that you're not in alignment with your values.
Yeah. And honoring, I think of it as, I could say be polite, I could say be kind, I could say any of those words, but I think when we're thinking of decent, we're thinking of, is this a behavior that you're proud of? Because you can be kind to someone and be patronizing, right? But are you treating them like a fellow human being, like that we're the same? I'm going to extend to you the common courtesy or decency that I would like you to extend to me.
Decency feels more Saturnian to me.
It is a Saturnian word.
Then the kindness doesn't feel like Saturn, but decency sounds like Saturn.
It's a Saturn word. That's why I picked it. Saturn word. It's humble. It's humility. It's humility. I'm like, no, the other words of Saturn are competent, capable, decent, respectful. You know, it's understanding that you can do it in a way that is. And again, you know, I was reading on Congressman Lewis and some of his writings, especially some of the stuff when he was really beaten up. And he said, you know, they'd let the mob extend their fury on us, right? And then that whole decency thing about how we're doing. Now, I just have to say, I told them not to deliver between 1 and 2, and they did. So I have, they're ringing my doorbell, they're ringing the phone. And so I'm not going to answer.
Oh my goodness. What do you have? You have something that do you need?
I said don't come. All right, I'll go get it. I'll see if it's.
All right, you guys. So I would love, we can't hear you, Anne, but that's okay. So I'm going to ask you a question since we have this little pause. How many of you have done a new moon ritual this new moon? And what did you do? Because I think so many times people get ideas from each other. So if you can put that in the chat, then that might help someone get a new idea. We did a new moon ceremony yesterday in the inner circle with Linda Bird, and she did something called a Stargate. I think it's not quite a meditation. It's more like an activation where you're inviting.
That's an example of Mercury not out of its shadow yet.
Yes, exactly.
And I said the only time not to come is between 1 and 2 because I have a podcast. And of course, that's when they get.
Exactly, right.
And the form says deliver between 1 and 2. So she did not listen to me.
Well, you know, sometimes when we use the word don't or not.
I know. They hear the time.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have said anything.
We were talking about the
yeah, sorry about that, folks. It was drugs from the drugstore. So yeah.
We were talking about the new moon ritual we did yesterday with the bird, which was she does the Stargate activation. So, and it's literally like calling in your ancestors from different stars, and it was really, really powerful. She also called in all the different planets and had us feel the energy as she invoked each planet. So, you know, to feel how different it felt when we were talking to Mercury or when we were talking to Venus, we were talking to Saturn. And what I'm noticing just the longer that we're working with astrology is you can truly feel the distinct energies and they feel different. It's not the same. That's why when you said decency, it's like, that's Saturn. That's not, you know, anything else. It's Saturn. But okay, so let's talk where we just were before that happened, which was decency.
When I move, it goes away. I've got Neptune. It went off. Decency. Okay. Yeah. Decency is a Saturn word, and Saturn's in the 3rd house, right? So it's the thing we make commitments to, the thing we say I'm going to do. It's acting your talk, walking your talk, talking your walk, you know, that making the match. And Saturn, of course, you know, he rules modesty. So he says, are you decent? You know, and, you know, are you in your underwear kind of thing? Are you decent to answer the door? It's got a lot of connotations. And I think the concept of what we're working with now is, you know, what is it you want? You know, what's your purpose? Why are you here? And we're all being asked that, and we're all being shown, you know, well, if I measured my life this way, does that measure still hold? Is that what you want to be known for? Is that what you're here to do? And if so, great, 90 miles an hour towards it. If that's not what you're here to do, okay, let's go do something else. It's a new moon. And the opposition to Saturn allows you to end the things that you're not supposed to focus on. But it also allows you to put a stake in the ground and say, this is what I'm committing to. Because Saturn's in the house of commitment. He's opposite the moon. He's talking to him. He's saying, what are we committing to? And then Mercury is squaring Mars in a couple of days to say, I'm going to take action on this, and I'm going to go do it. And so that Mercury Mars that inspires us to do things. But really, what is it you want to do? And that, you know, what, you know, it's an age-old question. What do women want? What do people want? What do you want to do? And, you know, when you were 13 or 15 or going to college or going out in the world, and you're like, what do I want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? What brings you joy? What brings you happiness? What brings you, well, I don't know that I can do that. I don't know if I can make any money at it. Is money your value? What's your value?
Mm.
What's your Saturn? What do you value? What's that? What is that? And of course, Saturn rules what we amount to in our life. So he's saying, I'm resetting the clock. I'm turning you all into butterflies once this stupid thing is over and we get, sorry, COVID, I have great respect for you. Once this wonderful virus is finished and has moved on to someplace else, we're making you look, we're making you focus, we're making you breathe, making you breathe in, breathe out what you're looking for.
Anne, you brought up the childhood,
Yeah.
10, 12-ish age, 13.
Well, the planets are those ages.
Right. And there's so many clues to what we really want when we tap back into that time of our life and what we valued. And it doesn't mean, exactly what, I was taking ballet lessons. Does that mean I want to be a ballerina? No, but I love to dance. And am I doing enough of that? So there's those clues, I think, from those time periods in our life. And it's really helpful to go back and maybe even while we're doing the new moon intentions, there is an element of what is it that my inner child, like what brings me joy from that place of innocence inside of me, and that I've told myself I can't do for whatever reason, but it's still alive and it still brings joy. I mean, it's one of the great things about having children in my life. They force me to play. They force me to boogie board all day and then go snorkeling and then, camp out under the stars and sit on a lawn chair at 2 a.m. and look up at Jupiter and Saturn. But if I was on my own, I wouldn't be doing those things. So it's paying attention to those childhood, that inner child yearning of what we really, that to me is way more what we really value than whatever society has put on us as we've gotten older.
Yeah. Yeah. And also when you're having one of those moments and you go, well, or like when you're mad and you go, how old am I right now? And you go, I'm like 4. Go look in your chart for what planet's at 4, because that's what's being evoked, your inner 4-year-old. And then you can get a clue on how to handle it, because they're all people. I mean, I like to think of the planets as being like people or personality facets maybe, but they have different ages. So I was saying something to one of my friends and she was talking about a guy and she goes, he's a flat lever. I'm like, oh, what? She goes, he's a flat lever, FLATLEAVER. I mean, I had her say it a few times. I said, what is a flat lever? Well, she's born in the Bronx, tough borough, 7th kid of a big Irish family, and flat lever was a bad thing. They left you flat. And so describing him, but when she said it, she was like 5. He's a flat lever. And I'm like, wow, where'd that come from? Wow. And then, and it really was a planet in her chart that was about being abandoned.
So today it would be called ghosting.
Today would be called ghosting, yeah.
Then it was a flat lever.
That was a flat lever back then, yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, that word from your childhood. I had one of my favorite people. She was a pretty wild little kid, and she told a story. We were talking about her chart in a class, and she told a story, and she was flirting with a little boy who lived across the hall, and it was an apartment, and she was sticking her tongue out at him, and they were playing. They weren't allowed to go in the hall, but they were opening the door and doing this flirty thing. Her mother was in the shower, and she got her tongue caught in the door, and it cut it. And blood and, mouths read. Her mother comes flying out of the bathroom naked. It's kind of like my water bug story last week. And her mother's like, you're a bratty brat. And she goes, I'm a bratty brat. And I'm like, whoa, whose voice is that? It's those words that pop up out of you.
Yeah.
Right. And those are what are coming up for all of us to look at and go, am I a bratty brat? I said, well, you were just flirting with a little boy across the street. Just because the door slammed on your tongue, which you didn't intend, you're not a bratty brat, but that's what she was told she was.
Right? So there's this opportunity to remother ourselves.
Yeah.
In those moments where that might have happened and there's an imprint, it's like you were able to go in for her and be the mother being like, well, it's really not your fault. You didn't do that on purpose. You're really not a bratty
You're
brat.
only two.
Yeah, but we can do that for ourselves too, as we
Yes.
get the awareness of these things that come up.
And we can do it for our partners.
Yes.
Because a lot of our friends and our partners are having these stories come up, and you can reflect to them and say, really? You know where you were too. You were flirting with a little boy. You were following the rules. You just had the door open.
Right.
You didn't know the door would slam on your tongue,
Right.
So, yeah.
That's interesting. I wonder how that's impacted also her willingness to be flirtatious and fun, because that experience was so painful. It probably had ripple effects beyond feeling like she's a brat.
Yeah, well, she's not a brat. She's brilliant. She's one of the most wonderful people in the world. But that, there was something wrong with that.
Yeah.
That moment. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So in summary,
yeah,
we have
a big week.
Big
but
week.
Not intense.
Right. 7, 8-ish. It sounds like more of an integration week. Like there's all these things that have happened. Now we're integrating, we're implementing, we're applying. Okay. So we have the new moon opposite Saturn. Think about your North Star. What are those big dreams? What are your values? Where do you want to go? And vision board or do some sort of ritual for yourself on that. Yep. And know that this is a really good time to implement structure around these things.
Yeah.
So making commitments and structure to bring yourself closer to those things. All right. Then we have, we might be crabby. There's Mercury square Mars. I wrote that down. There might be some crabbiness.
Little cranky crabby.
Yeah. The sun's going into Leo, which is a very creative place.
That happens on the 22nd.
On the 22nd. Happy birthday to all the Leos out there. Mm-hmm. And then we have Venus square Neptune. So
that's the dreams, but it's right after Venus comes through. She's going to form a finger of God with the COVID planets. And as she does that, they may say to her, well, I don't know that you can really do that. And she wants to say, but it's really one of my dreams. So it's a week not to let people take away your dreams. It's a week to say, well, that's my dream. And if you're going to talk mean to me about my dream, I'm not going to tell it to you. I'm just going to go do it.
Nice. Okay. That's really helpful.
And that may be important also because we're going to have Mercury aspecting Chiron too. And so Chiron a lot of times is when people like to rain on your parade, where they say something a little critical. And you take it personally, so, and it's, I was in a situation recently and someone was saying, wow, and then when you get mad and you leave and then you leak the emails and I'm thinking, oh, you get mad and you leave and then you leak the emails. I'm like, I don't leak emails, but you do, right? This is one of those weeks where you want to watch where people say to you, well, and you're kind of like, I don't do that. Is that what you do? Is that what you do? Okay, good.
It's very revealing, actually.
It's a very revealing week. Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, Amanda, but back when you were in corporate, right? And they would say, we're a company with integrity. We're a company with this. And when Google was formed and we do no harm. I'm like, oh, no, that's not, like they say it. And then you're kind of like, that's what you're really working to become.
Right.
Right. The mission statement, which is what are we working? Yeah, what are we working to become? We aren't that yet, or that's our vision. But then, how well do we execute it?
Right.
So that's the other way to think of it: is you can write your mission statement this week.
That's nice, but then not just put it on the wall and forget about it.
Right.
Actually do it.
Reference it. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. All right. So then. Looking at what were the rules that you were taught? Do you still want to follow these? What were the things that you were said about you? Do you still believe these? Are they true? So lots of opportunity for reflection on those. And this question again, am I living my life in accordance with my values? The idea around pitching to our strengths. So taking some time to, what are your strengths? How can you actually bring those forward even more? And how can you support those in other people too, the people around you?
Right.
And be decent.
And I'll add one more. Use the thesaurus and look up the antonym. So you're really aggressive. Go look up the opposite of it. You're really intense. Go look up passionate. Like find other words for it and find other words opposite it, and then think about the person that said it to you or how you say it to yourself. Like, because Venus is in Gemini, so she wants us to look at both sides of the story. So in the case of my friend who stuck her tongue in the door and, continued to have a life like that. She's done a life like that. But when you said that, I'm like, no, but then I went, oh, she's really worked really hard on those areas to not be a bratty brat, but she's not a bratty brat.
And maybe even overcompensating though. Sometimes we go the opposite.
That's what, after you said that, I went, no. And then I went, oh, well, let me just, Yeah, it's understanding that there's these polarities. And a lot of times when we hear things when we're little, it becomes the story. And now we're just going to say that was a story. Do you still want to carry it with you, or do you want to go do something else?
Yeah.
You want to carry it. So if you just even, if you go read about Congressman Lewis, and he talked about, he was the youngest guy on the platform on the Martin Luther King speech, and they modified his speech and they took out stuff that made it less assertive and aggressive. And so they had what he wanted to say and what he did say, but he had a lifelong passion that he followed, right? That he followed through his life. And I guess on Barack Obama's inauguration, now mind you, he couldn't eat at the lunch counter in Woolworths when he was a kid. And those of you who don't remember Woolworths, there was a 5 and dime store where you went and they had a counter with really good hamburgers and French fries and sodas, ice cream sodas. And he couldn't eat there. And he's at the inauguration of a black president. And when he went up to Barack at the lunch to say, sign this, Barack signed it because of you, John. Thank you, Barack Obama. Right? I'm here because of you. Wow. It's understanding that the work we do now, we have no idea what it's going to mean down the road.
So true. We have no idea ever. Yeah.
And so that's why it's important to behave with decency, because then you're giving them your positive Saturn and you're modeling for them what the structure that you believe in is, because your Saturn is the structure you believe in. Yeah.
Very good. All right. And so much there for us.
Juicy week, folks.
I hope that was helpful, everybody. Thank you so much for being here week after week. We love sharing this time with you. Reminder, if you want to get your weekly horoscope by sign sent to your inbox, you can go to astrologyhub.com/horoscope, or just go to astrologyhub.com and then click on the little horoscope link and you can sign up there. And Anne, we'll be here same time next week.
Same time next week. And I will say, Christopher Renstrom, who's writing that column, he is like a brilliant astrologer. He's wonderful. One of my favorite people.
Amazing human being. He is just, I every single time we get on to do a live, the backstage part is so fun. I feel like I just like giggle and laugh for like 15 minutes before we it's similar to with you, Anne. We do a lot of laughing
before we get on, before we get our serious faces on. Very serious. But to be serious now. But yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah,
he's a gem. Absolutely. Yeah. All right, everybody, take care. Thank you so much for being here, and we will
have a good week
next week.
See you next week. Bye. Yeah. Enjoy Leo. It's summer.